The circular saw is one of those tools you've just got to have in your shed because it's the #1 tool that can tackle a wide range of tasks. I'll show you what to look out for when purchasing one and, more importantly, how to use it safely. Now, there's a lot of options out there, so there's a few things you need to think about before choosing one. Is it a one-off job? Are you going to be using it every day? Are you going to be out the back of a farm or in a workshop or up on a roof? Do you need a lot of power or only a little amount of power? All of these things you need to take into consideration before entering a store. Now, there's a couple of different models you can choose. We've got our friend over here that's been tried and tested for many, many years, our plug-in model. And then we also have our battery model or cordless circular saw. Nowadays, these saws deliver just about as much power as our plug-in models. It's nice and light, super portable. And the great thing about this battery, I can use this and a lot of other tools in the range. Now, there's a couple of different size saws on the market. So the first thing you need to work out is what sort of work you're going to be doing. Is it going to be smaller work like cutting maybe like this, sheets of plywood or smaller pieces of timber, something where you don't need a lot of depth in the blade? Well, then maybe a 165mm saw like that will do the job just nicely. But if you're going to be doing a lot more heavier work, cutting bigger pieces of timber, thicker pieces of timber, like retaining wall timber, framing, 8x2, 6x2, even fence palings, then maybe the 185mm is a better option for you. Now, depending on what you're cutting will determine what sort of blade you're going to use. Now, you have a general purpose blade, which is a larger tooth one, which is more suited for cutting bigger pieces of timber like framing, etc. Now, if you're going to be doing a lot of finer cutting, like say plywood or Maltica, custom wood, etc., you'd want a blade with more teeth. The more teeth there are, the finer the cut you're going to get. Time for a wee little tour around our circular saw. So, basic features. We have our safety guard, we have our depth gauge here, which allows the table to drop up and down and lock off. We have our 45 table tilt. We have our locking screw over here, which will clamp down our guide. Over here we have a safety button, so I cannot start that saw unless that is depressed first. Now, when it comes to safety, it's a no-brainer. You always have to have your eye protection and your ear defenders. Now, you never ever want to put a hand or a foot behind the circular saw when you're using it. Now, I see this a lot on building sites. Someone's cutting a piece of timber and they've got their foot holding it. So you've got to imagine the blade is traveling in this direction, so it's all too easy for that circular saw just to come firing backwards and chopping your toes off. Now, really important before you kick off, you want to make sure that the guard is operating correctly. The spring is springing that back. Quite often you'll get bits of timber stuck up inside the guard here, so just make sure it's all working nicely. Next thing, to have a good quality finish of work, you always want to make sure your blade is always sharp. Having a good sharp blade not only is going to give you a good finish, but it's also going to be less wear on your motor and your battery as well. Now, always ensure that the material you're cutting is fixed to your bench securely before you start. Now, it doesn't matter what material you are cutting, make sure that your blade is protruding through your material about 5 to 10mm. Lock that off. That way, you've got a lot more control on your saw. Now, for whatever reason, if you have to drop your blade into the surface of a material, because you want to do a plunge cut, for example, you want to make sure that the front of your saw is securely on the ground first. You can bring your safety back a little way, start your saw up, and then drop that in nice and slowly. So you never want to pull the guard back, exposing the blade, with it going and dropping that down. That's just going to whip straight back. And finally, with your corded saw, always check the cord for nicks, frays, or exposed wires, and have it tested and tagged regularly. Now, another great feature of the circular saw is I can cut any angle from 0 up to 45 to 50 degrees. All I've got to do is select my angle, lock that off, set my depth, and I'm good to go. Now, another great feature of the circular saw is the ability to rip timber. And ripping means going down lengthways of the timber. So with all saws, you get one of these little guides attached, and we simply put it in. Now, when you're setting your guide and if you're opening up your blade, always take your battery out or unplug it from the wall. Set the distance that you want, lock it off. Obviously, you've set your depth that you like. Make sure your timber is firmly fastened down. In this particular situation, I've gone away from my cramps and I've actually screwed it straight down. That way, my guide isn't going to get in the way of any clamps. And when cutting, move the saw forward at a steady pace, but don't force it. Righto, there's a huge range to choose from in store. So now that you're armed with a whole lot of knowledge, it'll make your decision a lot easier. And if you have any questions, our in-store experts can help you choose the one that's just right for you. If you liked what you've seen, subscribe to the Mitre 10 YouTube channel for more handy content, or click here to watch some now.